You've built your life around someone. You've sacrificed everything. Then one day, they vanish only to return in pieces, floating in the very river you once crossed together. November 15, 2023, a jogger's morning run turned into a waking nightmare when she spotted designer luggage bobbing in the river. But inside, not clothes, not shoes, a body. Meet Celeste Cruz, 26. Beautiful, ambitious, a Filipina immigrant chasing the American dream. She thought she had it all until she didn't. Tonight, we unravel how Celeste's pursuit of a better life led her into a nightmare she never saw coming. What happened to her? Who was she with? And why did it end like this? Stay with us. The truth is darker than you think. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what happens next will make you question everyone you trust. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Celeste Cruz was born and raised in the vibrant, bustling city of Manila, Philippines. Growing up, she was surrounded by a mix of cultures, languages, and opportunities that sparked her curiosity about the world beyond her home country. From a young age, Celeste demonstrated an innate drive to succeed. She excelled in school, often at the top of her class, showing an aptitude for languages and international relations. At 19, Celeste made the bold decision to leave her family and friends behind in Manila to pursue a brighter future in New York City. Armed with nothing but ambition and a deep desire to make a meaningful impact in the world, she arrived in the United States to chase her dreams. Upon arriving in New York, Celeste quickly immersed herself in the academic world. Enrolling at New York University, NYU, she pursued a degree in international business. Celeste was driven by the belief that a solid education would be the key to unlocking doors to opportunities in global diplomacy and finance, two fields she believed would allow her to make a tangible difference. Her time at NYU was marked by her relentless work ethic and academic excellence. Celeste maintained a high GPA while juggling internships, part-time jobs, and her busy social life. She spoke 3 languages fluently, English, Tagalog, and Spanish, which made her a valuable asset in her field and helped her network with international students and professionals. By the age of 26, Celeste was well on her way to completing her MBA in international business. She had already earned internships with prominent international organizations, which gave her invaluable insights into the world of global business and diplomacy. Celeste's aspirations go far beyond simply securing a corporate job. Her ultimate dream is to work for a prestigious international organization, like the United Nations, UN, or the World Bank. She envisions herself in a position where she can help shape global policies that impact the lives of millions of people, especially those in developing countries like her own. Her passion for helping others is rooted in her upbringing. Growing up in Manila, she witnessed firsthand the challenges faced by those less fortunate, and this ignited her desire to work in a field that could bring about meaningful change, whether through poverty alleviation, education reform, or sustainable development. Celeste dreams of creating lasting impact on a global scale. Celeste is not just intelligent. She is also known for her beauty both inside and out. Her charm and strong presence make her stand out in any room. But beneath her polished exterior lies a deep sense of compassion and integrity. She's a natural leader, able to command respect from those around her while always remaining approachable and kind. Her multilingual abilities are a testament to her commitment to connecting with people from all over the world. Celeste doesn't just see herself as part of a global community. She feels deeply connected to it. Her fluency in English, Tagalog, and Spanish enables her to communicate with a wide range of people, allowing her to bridge gaps and build relationships across cultures. Despite her successes, Celeste remains grounded and humble, always striving to improve and achieve more. She is highly disciplined, but also deeply compassionate, always willing to lend a hand or a listening ear to those in need. Brandon Lewis grew up in Portland, Oregon, a city known for its laid-back atmosphere and scenic beauty. Raised in a middle-class family, Brandon's upbringing was shaped by modesty and resilience. His parents worked hard to provide for the family, teaching him the value of hard work, financial responsibility, and perseverance. Despite not having the privileges of wealth, Brandon's parents instilled in him a deep sense of determination and ambition to succeed. From a young age, Brandon showed an interest in technology. He spent countless hours tinkering with computers, learning how to fix problems and troubleshoot issues. This early fascination with technology naturally led him to pursue a career in cybersecurity. A keen problem solver. With a passion for digital defense, Brandon quickly realized that he wanted to make a difference in the world by protecting people and businesses from cyber threats. After graduating with a degree in computer science, Brandon began his career as a cybersecurity analyst. He worked for a variety of firms, steadily climbing the ladder as his skills and reputation grew. His expertise in securing networks and identifying vulnerabilities quickly earned him respect in the industry. By the time he turned 31, Brandon had already established himself as a trusted cybersecurity professional known for his attention to detail, problem-solving skills, and quick thinking under pressure. While Brandon was professionally successful, his middle-class background meant that he had always been conscious of financial stability. He was careful with his income, preferring a simple lifestyle over the luxuries that his peers might indulge in. Despite his career success, Brandon's focus remained on building a strong, secure future rather than on acquiring wealth for wealth's sake. His work in cybersecurity, however, was his true passion. He wanted to protect people and companies from the increasingly sophisticated dangers of the digital world. In 2021, while attending a career networking event for tech professionals in New York City, Brandon's life took an unexpected turn. He was introduced to Celeste Cruz, a driven and ambitious MBA student at NYU. Their first encounter was brief but memorable. Brandon was immediately smitten by Celeste's beauty, confidence, and sharp intellect. He had met plenty of people at these events before, but there was something about Celeste that stood out. Her passion for international business, her ability to speak multiple languages, and her determination to make a difference on a global scale captivated him. As they spoke about their careers and aspirations, Brandon found himself drawn to her vision and energy. He admired how focused she was on her goals and how effortlessly she navigated the conversation with both grace and conviction. To him, Celeste was not just a beautiful woman. She was a force to be reckoned with. Brandon is a thoughtful and introspective man. He is not the type to wear his emotions on his sleeve, but his feelings for Celeste were undeniable. While he was used to working in a field that required logic, precision, and analysis, Brandon found himself deeply intrigued by Celeste's warmth and ambition. He admired her strength and resilience, qualities that mirrored his own journey in overcoming challenges and building a successful career. While Brandon has always been somewhat reserved, his connection with Celeste brought out a different side of him, one that was eager to support her dreams and ambitions. Despite their differences in background, there was an undeniable chemistry between them. 4. The first time, Brandon felt like he had met someone who matched his ambition and drive, but with a completely different perspective on the world. It was fall 2021 in New York City, where the crisp Air of autumn and the golden hues of the season set the perfect backdrop for what was about to unfold. Brandon and Celeste spent countless hours in cozy coffee shops scattered throughout the city. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mixing with the soft murmur of other patrons. The world outside seemed to disappear as they found comfort in each other's company. As their friendship blossomed into something deeper, Brandon found himself drawn to Celeste more than he had ever expected. What started as study sessions and casual conversations quickly turned into late-night talks and shared dreams. Brandon was captivated by Celeste's vision of a bright future and her unwavering ambition to succeed in everything she set her mind to. Brandon was willing to do whatever it took to help Celeste achieve her dreams, even if it meant taking on the kind of financial burden that most would avoid. When Celeste's tuition fees became an obstacle, he didn't hesitate. He dipped into his savings and in the end took on debt to cover the costs. He believed in her. He believed in them. By the spring of 2022, what had started as an academic and emotional partnership turned into something even greater, a commitment. Celeste and Brandon exchanged vows in a simple, intimate ceremony. There were no extravagant venues, no over-the-top decorations, just two people deeply in love, united by shared dreams and a promise to always support one another. But not all was as it seemed. Beneath the surface of this picture-perfect union, there were subtle signs that things weren't as simple as they appeared. Celeste's taste for the finer things in life became more apparent as time went on. A love for luxury, a penchant for designer bags, and trips to high-end boutiques. All things Brandon could never afford to sustain on his own. Celeste's obsession with social media started to take a toll as well. She was always posting, always sharing, always showcasing a life that seemed far beyond what they could realistically afford. Brandon, though loyal and supportive, couldn't help but feel the weight of trying to keep up with her lifestyle, and it started to chip away at the dream they were building. As the months passed, what began as a hopeful journey together began to feel more like a delicate balancing act. Their wedding photos, those moments of love and promise slowly dissolve into the cold reality of mounting debt, credit card bills, loan statements, the weight of financial strain pulling them apart. Would the dreams they had shared be enough to keep their love alive? Or was this the beginning of a much darker chapter? Spring 2023 arrived, and with it the harsh reality of post-graduation life. Celeste had dreamed of landing her ideal job at the United Nations or the World Bank. But the job market, it seemed, had other plans. With every unanswered email, every failed interview, Celeste's frustration grew. The ambition that once defined her seemed to slip further and further away, replaced by a growing sense of helplessness. The dream she had built her life around was now slipping through her fingers. As Celeste struggled to land a job, Brandon found himself working harder than ever. 80-hour weeks. Overtime, long nights spent in front of his computer screen. The pressure to support them both, to pay the bills, to carry the weight of their dreams, all fell on his shoulders. Brandon had always prided himself on his ability to provide. But as his hours stretched longer and longer, the strain began to show. He was growing weary physically and emotionally. Yet Celeste's unemployment only added to the pressure, creating a wedge between them that seemed to grow wider with each passing day. The growing distance between them was palpable. Late nights once spent in quiet companionship now felt empty. Celeste's eyes remained glued to her phone, answering mysterious calls that Brandon couldn't quite explain. Brandon couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He wanted to trust her. But the silence between them spoke volumes. And the phone calls, the sudden Secrecy, it wasn't like Celeste. Or was it? And then there was the dinner. Receipt. He had been working non-stop, sacrificing everything for their future. But Celeste had gone out for a fancy dinner without him. The receipt was a betrayal he hadn't seen coming. The question now lingered. Who had she been with and why hadn't she mentioned it? The tension between them reached its breaking point. Celeste's dreams were slipping away and Brandon's sacrifice seemed to be in vain. One evening, after another long shift, the conversation turned heated. Her words cut deeper than he could have imagined. They were both caught in a web of broken dreams, mounting bills, and unspoken expectations. What had once been a partnership of mutual support now felt like a battle, each word sharper than the last. As Celeste's ambitions collided with reality, the foundation of their relationship began to crack. And with each new lie, each new secret, it became harder to believe that they could ever go back to what they once had. Omar Hassan al-Rashid, the 38-year-old heir to one of the most powerful oil empires in the UAE, was a man of extraordinary wealth and influence. Raised in the luxurious world of oil barons, he never had to worry about the kind of financial struggles that others faced. His father, one of the wealthiest men in the Middle East, ensured that Omar was prepared for the world of high-stakes business from a young age. Educated at the prestigious Harvard University, Omar was not only groomed to take over the family business, but also to expand it on a global scale. His education, coupled with his sharp mind and drive, made him a formidable force in the business world. Fluent in multiple languages and well-versed in global markets, Omar was known for his keen sense of strategy and his ability to navigate complex international deals. Omar's professional life was defined by his ambition to elevate his family's business beyond the borders of the Middle East. His father's empire had already expanded across the globe. But Omar believed there was still more to conquer. He made it his personal mission to ensure that the family business would continue to thrive and grow. In 2023, Omar found himself in New York City for a 6-month business expansion project. The objective was clear: penetrate the American market, forge new partnerships, and increase the global influence of their oil and energy conglomerate. He was determined to make a lasting impact, not just as a businessman, but as someone whose legacy would endure. It was at a Filipino American Business Association event, an annual gathering of entrepreneurs and professionals, where Omar's path first crossed with Celeste Cruz. The event, held at a sleek Manhattan venue, was filled with the city's brightest minds. But it was Celeste who caught his attention. Omar was immediately captivated by her beauty, her intelligence, and the undeniable ambition that radiated from her. She wasn't just another ambitious young professional. She had a fire in her that reminded him of his younger self. As they spoke about their careers and aspirations, Omar realized that Celeste shared his drive. She too dreamed of changing the world, though from a different angle. Celeste represented everything Omar had ever dreamed of in a partner. Her sharp intellect, determination, and commitment to making a difference in the world intrigued him. She was the perfect balance to his life. A life built on wealth and power, but one that had become increasingly detached from the realities most people faced. As the night went on, their conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about their goals, their shared vision for global change, and the ways they could use their positions to influence the world for the better. Omar found himself drawn to Celeste not just as a potential business ally, but as someone who could challenge him, inspire him, and stand by him as an equal. Omar, despite his wealth and influence, was surprisingly humble in person. He never flaunted his status, nor did he boast about his family's legacy. Instead, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that commanded respect. He was known for being gracious and considerate, with a charm that effortlessly put others at ease. But beneath his calm exterior was a mind constantly working, analyzing, and strategizing for the next big move. Though his life was far removed from Celeste's modest beginnings, there was a shared understanding between them. Celeste's ambition reminded him of the same drive that had led him to success. And he couldn't help but admire her determination. In Celeste, he saw someone who could stand by his side, not just as a partner in business, but in life. She was the kind of woman who would not only keep up with him, but push him to be better. The first time Omar and Celeste truly connected was at a Filipino-American Business Association event. A conversation that started with business but quickly delved into something much deeper. Their shared interest in Southeast Asian trade and global economic partnership sparked a fiery exchange of ideas. Omar with his experience in global markets and Celeste with her academic background in international business found common ground discussing the intricacies of Southeast Asian trade relations. Their words flowed like a dance, intellectual, strategic, but beneath it there was an undeniable chemistry that neither of them could ignore. As days passed, their professional interactions grew into something more personal. Omar's interest in Celeste shifted from admiration to something deeper, more intoxicating. He began to shower her with attention and gifts designed to impress. First, it was a sleek designer bag, then exclusive tickets to an art gallery opening. Omar made sure to curate the perfect experiences, each one more extravagant than the last, tempting Celeste to accept his world. But it was never about the gifts themselves. It was the allure of what they represented. Meanwhile, back in their shared world, the growing distance between Celeste and Brandon became more apparent with every passing day. Their lives, once intertwined, now appeared worlds apart, where Brandon sat alone, hunched over a steaming bowl of ramen in a humble NYC diner. Celeste dined at Le Bernardin, the most exclusive seafood restaurant in the city. Brandon, working endless hours to make ends meet, could no longer offer the kind of life that Celeste had become accustomed to. The life of luxury that Omar was showing her. Dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, private events with industry mogul was a life she hadn't expected but now craved. And with every extravagant gesture, with each gift and lavish evening, Celeste found herself more drawn to Omar. The temptation was undeniable. The allure of his world impossible to resist. It wasn't just about the wealth. It was the promise of a life she'd always dreamed of, one where she could make an impact and feel powerful in ways that were now beyond Brandon's reach. As the distance between them grew, so did the pull between Celeste and Omar. A connection built not just on attraction, but on shared ambitions, desires, and the kind of life Celeste had longed for. Brandon's suspicions had reached a boiling point. The late nights, the secrecy, the unexplained absences, it all added up to something he couldn't ignore anymore. One afternoon, he decided to follow Celeste. He needed answers, and he wasn't going to let her slip away without understanding what was going on. He trailed her discreetly, weaving through the crowd, staying just close enough to make sure he didn't lose sight of her, but he had no idea what he was about to uncover. Later that night, Brandon followed her again. This time with a different plan. When she left the hotel hours later, he waited until she was out of sight before slipping into her car. A risky move that could backfire. What he found in the trunk sent a chill down his spine. Brand new designer clothing, tag still on, tucked away in the back of her car. The kind of Clothes Celeste had never once mentioned buying. The kind of clothes Brandon couldn't afford on his best day. Why had she been hiding them? Where had they come from? As the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place, Brandon knew. He needed more than just suspicions. He needed proof. His heart pounded as he rifled through Celeste's personal files, finding the bank statements he'd been dreading. Thousands of dollars deposited into her account under names he didn't recognize. No explanations, no receipts, just cash poured into her account like clockwork. And then the final piece of the puzzle, the most damning discovery of all. For 4 months, Celeste had been lying to him. All the nights she claimed she was working late, all the business trips she'd taken, the events she attended, none of it had been what she said. Behind the smile, behind the promises, Celeste had been living a double life. Celeste's world had shifted long ago, but now the man she had once trusted knew everything. Every lie, every secret, and it all came crashing down in one brutal moment. As the weight of Celeste's betrayal sank deeper into his psyche, something inside Brandon snapped. The man who had always been calm, collected, and methodical began to unravel. His once unwavering loyalty to Celeste turned into something darker. A thirst for answers that consumed him entirely. Brandon had always been the protector, the one who worked tirelessly to make a future for them both. But now he was left questioning everything. His worth, his love, his sacrifices. His world had shattered. And in its place, something darker began to grow. Brandon couldn't stand the idea of someone like Omar. Someone so out of his reach. Taking Celeste from him, driven by a need to understand the man who had seduced her, Brandon dove into a relentless investigation of Omar Hassan al-Rashid's life. His background, his family, his empire. Everything about him was now a target in Brandon's mind. Omar was everything Brandon wasn't. Wealthy, powerful, untouchable, the kind of man Celeste was drawn to whether he liked it or not. And Brandon couldn't help but resent the man who had taken everything from him. September 2023. With his mind racing, Brandon made a decision. It was extreme, but in that moment, the only thing that made sense was to secure a future for himself one way or another. His anger, his heartbreak, it led him to purchase a life insurance policy, a staggering $1.8 million payout in the event of his death. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about control, about the power to dictate the terms of his fate, to hold something over the people who had hurt him. The policy would guarantee that if things went south, he wouldn't be forgotten. And as Brandon's obsession with Celeste, with Omar, and with the shattered pieces of his life deepened, a dangerous thought began to take root in his mind, a thought he could no longer shake. It was a twisted declaration, a final break from the man he used to be. A vow that would lead him down a path from which there would be no return. The cold grip of reality tightened around Brandon. It wasn't just about the lies anymore or the betrayal. It was about the final blow. October 2023 would mark the end of everything they had built, everything he had sacrificed. Celeste's announcement shattered what was left of his hope. Her words hung in the air, suffocating him. It wasn't just an announcement. It was the final nail in the coffin. Celeste, the woman he had poured everything into, the woman he had tried so desperately to hold on to, was leaving him for a life that he couldn't give her. Brandon's anger, a raw, burning thing, erupted. The walls of his world, already fragile, began to crack. The conversation they had, what should have been a farewell, was anything but civil. It was a clash of everything they had never been able to reconcile. The word stung more than he could have imagined. Mediocrity, the one thing he had always feared. In her eyes, everything they had, the quiet life, the stability, the love, was nothing more than settling for less. In that moment, the truth was laid bare. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about the sacrifices they had made for each other. Celeste's eyes no longer saw the man who had given her everything, only the man who couldn't give her what she truly wanted. Their dreams had diverged long ago. But it was only now that Brandon realized just how far apart they truly were. To Celeste, the possibility of a life filled with luxury, excitement, and ambition was worth more than the quiet, stable future he had promised her. As the finality of her departure set in, Celeste began packing her things. Slowly, deliberately, she filled the bags that Omar had bought her with her belongings. Each movement, each item she placed in the suitcase felt like a death toll ringing in Brandon's ears. And then the door slammed. The sound echoed through their once shared space. A harsh punctuation to the end of their story. Celeste had made her choice. And with that choice, everything Brandon thought they had, everything he believed in, was gone. Left behind was nothing but an empty apartment and the shattered remnants of a life he thought they would share forever. And just like that, everything was over. The love, the promises, the life they had built. All of it now reduced to memories and memories alone. After Celeste's departure, Brandon's world began to unravel in ways he hadn't imagined. The man who once thrived on discipline and focus now found himself consumed by a darkness he could not shake. Days blurred into nights. Work became something he could no longer face. He missed days at the office, calling in sick with a voice hollow and distant, lacking the strength to even pretend to care. His colleagues, once supportive, now barely recognized the man he had become. Unable to let go, Brandon turned his obsessive gaze to the one place he could track her, social media. Celeste, now in Dubai, seemed to live a life beyond his reach, and every post, every picture, felt like a knife in his chest. He watched her every move, studied every photo, every word she posted. The jealousy consumed him, his thoughts spiraling as he fixated on her new life with Omar. The more he saw, the more he felt his grip on reality slip. Brandon's descent was not just a product of heartbreak. It was a psychological breakdown triggered by what psychologists refer to as narcissistic injury. His ego, once defined by his achievements and relationships, was brutally wounded when Celeste left him for someone who represented everything he couldn't be. As Brandon's psychological state deteriorated, revenge fantasies began to take root in his mind. What had once been a sense of betrayal evolved into a full-blown obsession with making Celeste and Omar pay for the life they had taken from him. But Brandon's unraveling wasn't confined to his mind. He began to take actions that were impossible to ignore. The seeds of premeditation were planted in small, seemingly insignificant steps. The purchases were innocuous on the surface, just supplies, he told himself. But the items spoke volumes. Industrial plastic wrap. A bone saw, gloves. Each item was a silent confession to the twisted plan that had begun to take shape in his mind. Brandon's transformation was complete. The man he had once been was gone, replaced by something darker, driven by rage and the need for retribution. He had gone beyond the point of no return. Now there was only one thing left for him to do. In November 2023, Celeste returned to New York City. Her brief but tumultuous time in Dubai now a part of her past. The life she had built with Omar had crumbled. And now she had only one thing left to deal with. Finalizing her divorce with Brandon. What had once been a loving, promising relationship was now just another chapter in her life. She was eager to close. She had prepared herself for this moment. The inevitable legal separation. The ties with Brandon had been severed long ago. But this final step, the paperwork, was all that remained. Or so she thought. Just as Celeste was settling into her temporary stay in the city, a call came through. Brandon's name flashing on her screen. He had been quiet, distant, almost passive since their breakup. But now he was reaching out again. The words felt off. There had been no real need for these talks before. But Brandon's voice. His tone sounded different, more deliberate, more insistent. It raised a red flag in Celeste's mind. But she brushed it aside. After all, he was still her husband, and this was business. Brandon proposed a place for the meeting, a warehouse in Queens, where his cousin ran a small business. Seemingly practical, a neutral location to handle the final details of their divorce. No distractions, no prying eyes. It was late, 11:47 p.m. to be exact. Too late for a business meeting. Too late for a conversation that should have been handled during the day in a proper office with witnesses. But Celeste, focused on getting this part of her life over with, ignored the nagging feeling in her gut. The late hour, the secluded location, the absence of witnesses. These were the red flags Celeste should have noticed, but she didn't. She was already too deep in the legal process, too focused on ending things with Brandon for good. And all she wanted was to finish this chapter of her life. Brandon had always been charming, approachable. But tonight, something was different. His voice, when he spoke to her on the phone, had lost its usual warmth. It was colder, distant, almost as if he was trying to hide something. Something he didn't want her to hear. The moment Brandon's figure appeared in the doorway, Celeste felt a chill run through her. His posture was different, tense, rigid. There was an unsettling coldness in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. And yet, she pressed on, convinced that this was just another difficult conversation in a long string of them. Celeste had come to the warehouse expecting a simple conversation about the financial settlements. What she didn't know was that Brandon had something far darker in mind. The game he had been playing for months was about to reach its final dangerous phase. And Celeste, for all her intelligence, was walking right into his trap. Brandon had planned this moment meticulously. Every move, every detail, his tone, his timing, the location was calculated. And now with Celeste standing before him, there was no turning back. Tonight, Brandon's mind had already crossed a line from pain to something far more sinister. And Celeste, in her pursuit of closure, was unknowingly walking right into the heart of his carefully laid trap. Celeste entered the warehouse, her footsteps confident, the sound of her heels tapping rhythmically against the cold concrete floor. She had come to finalize her divorce, to end the chapter she had tried to close for months. But she was stepping into a nightmare. A nightmare of Brandon's making, one he had planned with chilling precision. She looked beautiful, elegant, poised, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. To her, this was just another cold negotiation. To Brandon, it was the final act in a play he had written in his mind long ago. Brandon stood in the middle of the warehouse, his posture stiff, his face unreadable. When Celeste entered, he took a deep breath, his voice, strained but desperate, cut through the silence. His words were raw, desperate. Everything he had tried to keep buried for months now spilled out. He wanted her back. He needed her back. But it was too late for second chances. And Celeste, despite her own pain, had already made her decision. Celeste's rejection hit Brandon harder than anything she could have said. Her refusal, the final severance, triggered something inside him. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface exploded in an instant, fueled by betrayal, jealousy, and a need for control that had twisted his mind beyond recognition. Her rejection, her refusal to stay, broke something deep within him. What had once been a man in love, a man desperate to hold on to what he thought was his, now turned into a man driven by primal rage. The crowbar was more than just a tool. It was symbolic, a brutal metaphor for what had been broken between them. What had once been their love, their life together, was now being shattered beyond repair. The crowbar wasn't just for breaking things. It was for breaking her, breaking them. Brandon's rage was no longer just about love lost. It was about the need to make her feel what he felt. To destroy everything she had built, everything she had become, until she was as broken as he was. What followed was a blur. A moment of fury, desperation, and destruction. A final violent act that would leave a permanent mark on both of them. One that could never be erased. In that instant, everything Celeste had worked for, everything Brandon had once believed in, was erased. With every swing, Brandon's mind cracked a little further. His soul torn apart by the violence he couldn't control. After the act was done, Brandon's mind shifted into a cold, methodical focus. He wasn't the man who had once loved Celeste. He was something darker, driven by an obsessive need to rid himself of what remained of their relationship. For hours, Brandon labored over the body, dismembering, separating, methodically breaking apart what he had once held dear. It was as if in his mind, he needed to erase every trace of her, every part of her that reminded him of the woman who had left him for another man. Once the body had been dismembered, Brandon took extra care to wrap the remains, each piece of her, in Filipino traditional fabric. It was a deliberate choice, a cruel mockery of Celeste's heritage, a final twisted act that spoke to his deep resentment for the woman she had become. The fabric, an important part of Celeste's cultural identity, now served as the final shroud for her. It was as if he was both honoring and desecrating everything she had once been. The cultural symbolism of the fabric, its significance to Celeste, was now twisted, used as a final act of domination. Brandon had two plans for disposing of the remains. One half would be cast into the cold depths of the Hudson River, a fitting metaphor for the drowning of his love. The other half would be incinerated, burned away in an industrial furnace, reducing Celeste to nothing more than ashes. The Hudson River, once a symbol of life and promise, now became a graveyard for the pieces of their past. The water consumed the remains, swallowing them whole as if they had never existed. Then, with the other half, he moved to the furnace. The fire roared as it devoured the last pieces of Celeste, turning them into nothing but smoke and ash. It was a final irreversible act, one that would ensure she would never return, never haunt him again. But in his haste, in his obsession with destroying everything that reminded him of her, Brandon made a fatal mistake. He left behind a crucial piece of evidence, one that would eventually unravel everything he had tried to bury. The Cartier bracelet, a symbol of her relationship with Omar, had somehow escaped the flames of the furnace. It lay there, untouched, a silent witness to the crime. The bracelet, a symbol of betrayal, of Celeste's connection to another man, was now the key that would unravel Brandon's twisted plans. Even in his desperation, even in his rage, Brandon had forgotten one simple truth. Nothing, no matter how carefully hidden, could remain buried forever. November 15, 2023. What started as an ordinary morning for a jogger in Lower Manhattan would soon become a scene that would rock the city to its core. It was a Louis Vuitton bag, unmistakable even from a distance. At first glance, it appeared to be abandoned luggage. But as the jogger approached, they quickly realized it was much more than that. Upon opening the bag, the jogger was met with a horrific discovery. Human remains expertly hidden inside a designer case wrapped in fabric. It was a gruesome sight, one that no one could ever forget. Within minutes, the authorities were on the scene, sealing off the area and beginning the painstaking process of retrieving the body. The remains had been left in plain sight, floating among the garbage and debris of the river. Yet hidden in plain view, a haunting metaphor for the life that had been discarded. Assigned to the case was Detective Patricia Valdez, a sharp and determined Filipino-American officer with years of experience handling the city's most heinous crimes. She arrived on the scene ready to piece together the fragments of a life now tragically shattered. Detective Valdez had seen her share of gruesome discoveries, but this was different. The victim was a woman, and the sophistication of the crime indicated a level of premeditation that immediately raised the stakes. As the investigation began, the media quickly descended on the case. What started as a grisly crime soon became a full-blown media frenzy. The headlines practically writing themselves. The murder of a beautiful Filipino woman left dismembered in the river was too sensational to ignore. The public's hunger for details was insatiable. Rumors flew. Whispers of a tumultuous relationship of a wealthy Arab lover and of a dark, twisted story of passion gone wrong. The victim's identity was still a mystery, but the media had already crafted their narrative. For the Filipino-American community, the crime struck a nerve. The narrative painted a picture of a woman who had been taken by the life she had dreamed of, only to meet a tragic, violent end. The media coverage not only sensationalized the crime, but it also framed it through the lens. As the investigation unfolded, the media quickly turned its attention to one suspect in particular, Omar Hassan al-Rashid, the wealthy heir to an oil empire and Celeste's recent lover. His connection to the victim, combined with the sensational details surrounding her death, made him an obvious target for public outrage. The public, fueled by outrage and the desire for answers, latched onto the idea of the foreign wealthy lover who had taken advantage of Celeste. As the media painted him as the prime suspect, the pressure mounted on Omar, despite his insistence on innocence. But as Detective Valdez dug deeper into Omar's involvement, a shocking twist emerged. Omar's alibi was airtight, something the public never anticipated. Omar's whereabouts on the night of Celeste's death were confirmed by security footage and multiple witnesses. He had been dining at a posh Manhattan restaurant. Surrounded by colleagues and clients, his actions documented every step of the way. The evidence was undeniable. Further complicating the case was a critical piece of evidence that had been overlooked. Text messages between Omar and Celeste showing that he had ended their relationship well before Celeste's return to New York. The text showed that Omar had made the decision to end things with Celeste a crucial piece of information that contradicted the idea of a jealous lover driven to violence. The final piece of the puzzle came from the forensic analysis of the fabric used to wrap Celeste's remains. While the media had assumed that the Filipino textile was a souvenir from Dubai, the truth was far more damning. Traces of the fabric were found wrapped around Celeste's remains, but it wasn't from Dubai as everyone had assumed. The textile, which was uniquely Filipino in design, had been bought in a small Brooklyn shop. This detail was crucial. It connected the crime to a location Brandon frequented, not Omar. As the evidence mounted against Omar, the public's anger began to shift. The sensational headlines that once pinned the crime on the wealthy Arab lover now seemed to fade, replaced by the slow burn of new revelations. Omar was cleared, his name no longer tied to the crime, but the truth was far from over. The investigation was far from finished. The real killer, however, remained hidden in the shadows, waiting for the pieces of their twisted plan to finally unravel. As Detective Valdez pieced together the evidence, the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The man who had so carefully orchestrated Celeste's death had been hiding in plain sight. His every action, a calculated step toward his ultimate betrayal. Now it was time for Brandon to face the consequences of his violent obsession. The store security footage was the first breakthrough. On October 15, Brandon was seen on camera purchasing the traditional Filipino fabric, the same fabric used to wrap Celeste's dismembered body. The footage was damning, irrefutable proof of his premeditation. Once the fabric purchase had been linked to Brandon, the investigation turned its focus to a new discovery. Brandon had taken out a life insurance policy in Celeste's name for a staggering $1.80 $8 million just months before her death. The policy had been purchased in September 2023. Mere weeks before Celeste's murder. The payout would have been substantial, enough to set Brandon up financially. Even if it meant destroying the woman he once claimed to love. With the evidence now undeniable, it was time to confront Brandon. Detective Valdez arranged a meeting at the police precinct where she would present the final evidence and force him to face his crime. Brandon's eyes flicker with a mix of defiance and fear. For a moment, he remains silent. But then the truth spills from his lips, raw and unrepentant. His confession was chilling in its coldness, as if he were explaining a business deal rather than a brutal murder. Brandon had never seen himself as a criminal, only as a man wronged who took matters into his own hands when he couldn't get what he wanted. Brandon's final words were a testament to the distorted way he viewed the world. To him, Celeste's departure wasn't about betrayal or love. It was about power, control, and the ability to make her regret her decision. In his mind, her choice had to be punished, and he was the one to exact that punishment. His confession revealed the true depths of his obsession. It wasn't just about the love he had lost. It was about the power he craved. In Brandon's mind, he had turned Celeste's rejection into his final victory. She had chosen another man, and he had ensured she would never get to enjoy that life. March 2024 marked the end of a long, painful journey for all involved. Brandon's trial had been a spectacle. His crime, a tragic tale of obsession and betrayal, played out before a jury of his peers. After weeks of testimony, the fate of the man who had so ruthlessly taken Celeste's life now rested in the hands of 12 individuals. For 3 hours, the jury deliberated. They listened to the testimonies, examined the evidence, and processed the confession that had chilled the courtroom. The questions were simple. Was Brandon a man driven by love? Or was he a monster who had turned his emotions into a weapon of destruction? At 2 p.m., after hours of careful deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. Brandon stood in the courtroom, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. The courtroom held its breath as the foreman stood to deliver the verdict. The room erupted into a mix of quiet sobs, murmurs of relief, and shock. Celeste's family, seated in the front row, exhaled deeply, knowing the man who had taken their loved one's life would never walk free again. Brandon's fate was sealed. Life without parole. As the court prepared to adjourn, the judge stood, delivering a statement that would haunt Brandon for the rest of his life. It was a statement that summed up the heart of his crime, the twisted way he had viewed love and marriage. The words hung in the air, a scathing judgment on the man who had once believed he could control everything, even love. Brandon's eyes remained fixed, unblinking, his face a mask of defiance. And then, in a final, chilling moment, Brandon spoke. His words, like his actions, revealed the darkness that had consumed him. The lack of remorse, the absence of guilt, the complete absence of humanity. The words echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap, shocking everyone who heard them. It was the final admission of a man who saw nothing wrong in what he had done. A man who had taken a life not out of self-defense or fear, but out of cold, calculated retribution. Omar Hassan al-Rashid's life, once filled with luxury and ambition, was forever altered by Celeste's death. Despite his innocence, the tragedy left a scar on his heart, one he would never fully erase. In the wake of the investigation and the trial, Omar's response was one of deep reflection. Determined to honor Celeste's memory and give back to the community she had come from, he established a scholarship fund for Filipino students. It was his way of making sure Celeste's dreams lived on, even after her tragic end. Omar's scholarship fund became a beacon of hope for young Filipinos aspiring to better their lives, just as Celeste had once hoped. It wasn't just about money. It was about carrying forward the spirit of a woman who believed in the power of education and hard work. After the scholarship's launch, Omar returned to Dubai. His life irrevocably changed by the events in New York. The love he had for Celeste, the dreams they once shared, were now reduced to memories. He carried with him the weight of the past. And while the scholarship helped honor Celeste, it could not fill the emptiness her loss had left behind. Celeste's tragic end was a manifestation of the dangers that can lie beneath the surface of seemingly perfect relationships. Experts say that what Brandon did was not just a crime of passion, but a result of psychological and emotional manipulation that turned love into something toxic. Brandon's obsession with control went beyond just money. It was about ownership. He felt that after everything he had sacrificed for Celeste, she owed him. This sense of entitlement became the breeding ground for his violence. In many abusive relationships, the emotional toll is just as severe as the physical. Partners who are financially dependent or constantly guilt into submission can feel trapped, often unable to leave due to the control exerted by their partner. Experts agree that there are often warning signs that can help someone recognize when they're in an unhealthy, manipulative relationship. Celeste, despite her independence, began to feel the weight of Brandon's manipulation. She wanted to break free, but the ties were too strong, the sacrifices too great. And for Brandon, every purchase she made, every step away from him, felt like a betrayal. Another important element of this case is the cultural dynamics at play. Celeste's immigrant dreams were central to her identity, and Brandon knew how to exploit that. Brandon used Celeste's aspirations to build a life in America against her, making her feel that her success and her future were tied to him. This manipulation, disguised as love, is a common tactic used by abusers to ensure that their partner feels trapped. As we reflect on this heartbreaking case, we're left with questions that challenge our understanding of love, power, and control. Love can often be a beautiful force. But when does it become something darker? When does it cross the line into ownership and manipulation? We want to hear from you. Comment below. What red flags would you have noticed in Brandon and Celeste's relationship? What signs did they miss that could have changed everything? If this case shocked you, wait until you see next week's investigation. Want to dig deeper into this case or future ones? Join our Discord for exclusive discussions with fellow true crime enthusiasts. Share your thoughts, theories, and stay updated on all our investigations. Remember, sometimes the person who loves you most is the one who will destroy you.